and your life.
Hello.
Hey, everyone.
Yeah, we decided I would introduce myself first for those of you that don't know me. I'm here with Kacen, who's brilliant. I'm RJ Barker. I'm the author of The Wounded Kingdom, which is Age of Assassins, which isn't quite in the books behind me there because I knocked it off the radiator earlier on. Blood of Assassins and King of Assassins, which is the first trilogy I wrote. And then the next one is The Bone Ships, which is up for the British Fantasy Society's Best Novel Award. And Call of the Bone Ships, which is here and that comes out at the end of this month. And I'm quite silly, as no doubt we will find out as we go along.
I'm excited for it. Hey everyone, I'm Kacen Callender. I am the author of Queen of the Concord and the sequel, King of the Rising, which is coming out December 1st. So in just about 2 weeks.
They're really lovely covers as well.
You said what?
They're really lovely covers as well. Really
thank you. I really lucked out with the covers. I just like seeing them side by side also because it's just like, you know, the kind of like yin and yang effect.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think we're supposed to just jump right into questions if we have some. So
we are.
Okay. So the first one is, what inspired you to begin writing your series, Queen of the Concord and the Bone Ships? So do you want to answer first, RJ?
Yeah, I really love the fiction of the sea, like Hornblower and Patrick O'Brien and Master and Commander, the film, and I really love nature, and I wanted to do something that had that kind of huge terrifyingness of nature in it. So there are these massive dragons of the size of an island that may or may not even know people are there, and marrying that with ships seemed like fun, and I'm kind of slightly obsessed with power and the way people, which I think that's something that interests you as well, okay, and what it does to people and what people will do to keep it. And I thought quite a nice way of doing that was to set this place up as a matriarchy, just because it's something we're not as used to, and it gives you a fresher way of looking at it. So that was kind of the genesis, and I described it to my agent as Master and Commander versus Godzilla, and and he said, "Tell no one that because it sounds silly and it's a really serious book." So of course I've told everybody it's Master and Commander versus Godzilla, which I think was his plan, because he wouldn't tell me not to do something because he knows that I'd just immediately do it and tell everybody.
That actually kind of reminds me of I switched editors. My first editor left Orbit and I got a new editor. So the first editor for Queen of the Concord, Sarah Guan, who's absolutely amazing. But we also had a moment where she was like, just don't tell people that that was how you, because for Queen of the Concord, I think at some point I was like, it's a Shakespearean, Agatha Christie murder book about colonialism. And I think people were like, what? Does that actually make sense? It does in my mind. It really does. So I decided to, Queen of the Concord came out of me, first and foremost, like really wanting to write a Caribbean inspired fantasy, because I felt like I hadn't really seen as many yet. And to actually write about the Caribbean from the place of colonialism and not necessarily in the way that I feel like I've seen non-Caribbean people, I'll say write about the Caribbean kind of like almost a touristy and almost like a colonialist fashion. So kind of like the irony of that is like someone not from the Caribbean writing about the Caribbean and how that dynamic like plays into colonialism in itself. And from there, it really just kind of like unraveled into a lot of different threads and themes about being an oppressor who's also oppressed, and how I have experienced that a lot in my life, but making that kind of like into a metaphor, excuse me, in Sigourney Rose's story. I realized that I didn't really do you feel like we should talk about like the summaries, like the plots of the book?
Yeah, I think you could do that. I think people are expecting us to talk about the books.
Right. Yeah. I feel like I guess I should say Queen of the Concord is about Sigourney Rose, who is on kind of like this quest for revenge because her entire family has been slaughtered by these colonial powers called like the Furen. So she is trying to get power back from them by going to what is like the Royal Island, and kind of like maneuvering and tricking her way into getting power back from the white people who colonized her islands. But as soon as she gets there to the Royal Island, people just start to die one by one. And so she needs to discover who the murderer is before they kill her as well. And I don't want to spoil who the murderer is, but yeah, that's basically it.
Are you a big whodunit fan then?
I think I am. I did read some Agatha Christie when I was younger. I read like a lot of like kind of thriller mysteries. I think I want to, I feel like I am in my soul, but I haven't. I also write YA, I also write middle grade. So I feel like my reading tastes like have to kind of be very, scattered, I guess.
I'm a huge whodunit fan. The Assassin books are all murder mysteries. That's what they're written as. And the first one, I wrote a book that didn't quite sell, a science fiction novel, and I ended up speaking to an editor about that book. And we just ended up talking about Agatha Christie for an hour.
Yeah.
And she said, I wish somebody would do a fantasy Agatha Christie. And I was like, yeah, that's what I want. And it even has the kind of bit at the end where you gather everyone together and go, and this is how it was done. Which I love. It's just one of those things that really
I love kind of like genre bending fantasies like that, where you just have kind of like different elements from, favorite sorts of books kind of like thrown into the fantasy also. We have a lot of questions.
Oh gosh. We better.
We've just been chatting away, which is good also. Yeah. There's one for you, RJ. Were you writing the sequel during the COVID-19 outbreak? And if so, how did it affect the story?
Oh, I think that's a question for both of us, really, because it's worldwide, isn't it? And it doesn't really matter where you are. But yes, I was. It kind of I'm quite good at ignoring the world. It's a talent I have. I can shut the whole world out, and that's good. But I think there is kind of, even for someone like me who's very relaxed and chilled out and ignoring everything, I think there is a kind of a background anxiety in the back of your head that maybe you're not even aware of. And I think I slowed down while I was writing the second book, Call of the Bone Ships, which comes out on the 26th of November. He said, just shoehorning that in. And I kind of had a wobble in the middle of it and thought, oh my God, no one's going to read this. No one's going to want to read this book about ships that do ship stuff. And I think it was more to do with the whole COVID thing. And also, I was slowed down a lot because I had to homeschool my little boy, which does not help with writing. A 10-year-old is not a good writing companion. They want to talk about other things. Though his grammar is better than mine. He's quite useful because they teach them. So yeah, a lot of it. The only time I did actually completely stop writing during the recent American elections, I just couldn't. That was properly. I wanted him to lose, and sorry, people that don't. Well, no, I'm not. And I felt really anxious, and when we had like Brexit votes over here, that probably affected more. I think COVID's more of a kind of slowly planing away at your psyche rather than a big thing.
Yeah. I can't even remember when I was writing King of the Rising. I feel like time makes absolutely no sense for me right now. So I can't even remember if I wrote that during COVID or not. But I think that COVID did play a huge effect just in who I am as a person. And then of course that sucks into what I'm writing about. So the entire series has been such a, for me, just kind of like a way to discuss what does it mean to be like an oppressed person who also is seeking privilege, and how do we look at ourselves in a way to kind of like deconstruct privilege to not leave other people behind. This has a lot to do with like race and a lot to do with like class and just the way. So basically, I don't want to spoil like the end of King of the Rising, but I think that has played a huge role. And I think COVID has forced a lot of people to reconsider capitalism, basically, and reconsider how our society has been built and whether it needs to be destroyed completely to make sure we're not leaving people behind.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that will also affect everything I do in the future. That kind of a lot of things that I've always thought that society is about how we should be looking after people, and especially the people who are like disability is something that crops up again and again in my work because I'm chronically ill. That probably affects me more than COVID, to be honest with you, because that comes with its own stuff. But you kind of hope that it is a big world-shaking event, and it, as well as affecting society, it affects all the art that comes out of society. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe it might not be in these, because me and Kacen were talking about how to write a trilogy and how we do it. So we'll probably get onto that because we stopped talking about it so we could talk about
I know, I want to, yeah.
But because these were already, to a degree, sort of planned out, even though I don't really plan things. But I think what I do next will definitely have some sort of... it won't be a plague novel or anything.
Yeah.
It will carry through some of the thoughts that have been in my head about how we should be looking after each other more. Just a clarifying of what I already thought, really.
Absolutely, yeah. And also, it got me to thinking about, we've been on this question for a while, but I'll say quickly, it got me to thinking also about, it forced everyone to kind of like stop and to kind of reconsider our own lives and to heal. I think a lot of people, are looking at like childhood traumas for the first time. It's like, we have nothing else to do, so we might as well start to kind of like heal and grow. So I feel like a lot of my writing in the future will also be a lot about internal growth for the positive. For both, what other books would you recommend to people who loved your book?
Oh, you start, Kacen.
Marlon James, Tasha Suri. I mean, I hope I'm even allowed to say this, but N.K. Jemisin. But I feel like everyone loves N.K. Jemisin, so maybe that's a cop out. But basically that's what I'm striving for. So I feel like that's sort of reader I'm hoping would also like my book.
I've not read Marlon James' fantasy books. I don't know why I find it really difficult to settle into reading fantasy while I'm writing it. But A Brief History of Seven Killings is just an astounding thing.
Yeah. And the Book of Night Women was one of the major influences of Queen of the Concord, for sure, too.
I've not read that. I'm going to have to go back and read that because I loved A Brief History. Well, I didn't. I'm never going to read it again. I found it deeply unpleasant, but also quite brilliant and made me very uncomfortable in ways that I think a good book can do, which I really like. As for me, what books to read if you liked The Bone Ships, I would say go and read Patrick O'Brien's Aubrey Maturin books, which are they're set in the 17th century, and they do a thing that I was very deliberately trying to do with The Bone Ships, in that they throw you into the world of 17th century sailing on these big battleships, ships of the line, as they put, and they don't explain anything. He doesn't tell you anything about it or what anything is, and you literally have no idea what is going on for the first 3 chapters. And then suddenly that you kind of, it filters down this world, and suddenly you start thinking, oh, that's at the front, that's there, and this world starts to make sense. And there's kind of this really weird feeling of achievement when you get it. But there are also books about friendship, which I'm kind of obsessed with, and this very strong male friendship that bonds in it, that isn't something you see in fantasy much. And they're really funny, which I love. There's a brilliant thing about the sloth, which if we have time, I'll tell you about the sloth if we have time at the end. But those books, and I always say Watership Down because it's just so, it's the text that is in my head. I'm upset. I'm really interested in this with authors. Is there a text that you read at a certain time in your life that you think is always there in everything you do? Because for me, it's Watership Down. It's always there. There's something of it.
Yes, there is. I don't even want to say the name. I've talked about, actually I had an event earlier today, and I talked about the author and the book at that point. And if you follow me on Twitter and you are into the children's world and understand transphobia issues that have been happening, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I feel like saying names like gives power, and I just don't want to give that energy away. But if you know what I'm talking about, that is the book that really shaped who I was as a writer from a younger age. So what influences or inspirations did you have for the world that the Bone Ships and the Call of the Bone Ships are set in? I feel like I already answered this question. I was talking about the inspired fantasy, but I'd love to hear what you have to say.
As I said, it was about getting people to look at power and how it works, and also that there's. Kacen probably understands this as well. I've always been an outsider and someone that doesn't quite fit in the world. So I'm lucky to be kind of a white middle class kid, or well, working class, but it makes life easier than it might be otherwise. But I've never quite found that place in the world until I discovered goths, and that was quite fun. And then kind of coming into the fantasy world and books was kind of feeling, oh, I work in this place. I understand it. So I always write about outsiders. Girton in The Wounded Kingdom is somebody who doesn't really understand the world and is an outsider. And Joron in The Bone Ships is somebody who is not where he should be and has to learn to succeed in a world that he's really not equipped for. He's terrified of violence and has had terrible experiences that keep coming back to him, and he has to learn that maybe you can change things and you can be a better person, and that journey is a really interesting one to me. It's also a very fancy journey, but the outsider is kind of the only thing that I've not mentioned already about the Bone Ships.
Yeah. I don't want to mispronounce this name. This says, where did the idea for Goulamé come from?
That's not how you spell it, Amanda. It's the Callender, a race of avian creatures. Do you mind if I tell an anecdote, Kacen? Because when I was coming up with the world, I have a friend called Matt, and I used to play badminton with him before COVID said we couldn't go out of the house anymore. And he's lovely, and he lets me just talk ideas at him, and it is one of the most valuable things a writer can have. I just talk at him, and he listens kind of, and then we play badminton, and then go and talk more at him, and he puts up with me. And I'd explain this world to him, and it's matriarchy, and these big ships made out of dragon bones. And then I said, and then there's no mammals anywhere. It's all birds. It's all birds. And there's no mammals. It's all birds. All the life is based on birds. And I said, and then there's these wizards that can control the wind, because that's just a useful thing for a naval word. And we were walking out, and he said to me, I love the idea of these bird wizards that can control the wind. And I went, no, you've not been listening to me. What I said was there's wind wizards and it's all birds. And by the time I got home, I'd had this fantastic idea for these bird wizards that I'd just stolen directly off my friend mishearing me. So that's where they came from. They're thieved off my friend Matt. And then there's a fair bit of I think the Skeksis from Dark Crystal, the Chamberlain in the Gallem, because I love him. I've always loved him. I know he's meant to be the bad guy, but I don't. I wanted to be him when I was little.
Did you put your friend in the acknowledgements for the idea?
I killed him in the book.
Yeah. You killed your friend in the book?
Yeah. But I dedicated King of Assassins to my friend Matt. So he's got a whole book for himself. And now I just needed to get rid of him so he couldn't tell anybody that I stole his idea. So I've killed him in one of the books. So,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
If you could write sorry, what did you say?
You have those weird kind of fortuitous coincidences where something happens in your life and you just think, that's what I need.
Yes, but I feel like I have an issue of just having like too many ideas. So I try to pare down on them. I actually got have you heard of the Compost Heap before?
The what?
The Compost Heap idea. I got this idea from Neil Gaiman. It's like changed my life when it comes to keeping track of all these different ideas. It's just like, it sounds so pedestrian when I'm about to describe it, but I just never thought about it this way. I would always have like a zillion different documents with one sentence that's like, this is going to be the book about this. Neil Gaiman says, put everything in a compost heap where it's just like a bunch of ideas listed out by genre or by theme. And then suddenly it becomes easier for me to like connect a theme to a genre in a way that I wouldn't have considered before because it wasn't all in one document. Anyway, that wasn't even answering your question really, but I felt the urge to.
No, I like that. I keep all my ideas in my head, And I always think that if I forget something, then it probably wasn't that good anyway. But if I can remember it in like 6 months, then that might have legs.
I don't trust that because I feel like I will write down an idea and I'll swear 5 years later, oh, this is such a fresh, amazing idea. And it's like I look back at my notebooks from 5 years ago and it's like it's like literally exact same idea. Sometimes word for word. So it's like might as well, for me anyway, it's like I need to just write it down so I don't continue, like it obviously is just going to continue like to fester in my head until I like get it out some way, you know?
I always feel like writing a thing down is giving myself permission to forget it. And then I go back to things because I do I'll leave the odd note in a Word file and I'll find them years later and it'll just be like a sentence and I'll just be looking at it going, I don't know what that means. What was I even thinking? It's just, I don't understand at all. But I love the idea that, not even the idea, the fact that we all find completely different ways of getting on with it. And it really is just about, the best thing I ever heard was Chaz Brenchley told that whatever works for you is what works with writing. Exactly. And that was the most liberating thing I ever heard. I was just like, oh, right.
And I don't know if you found this, but I feel like it also changes from book to book. Like I had to give myself permission to not use the exact same process from my previous book. So like free myself to figure out what it is I need to do for my current book, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't have, you sound a lot more worked. I don't have any processes.
I think that's great.
The only thing I do is I give myself permission right at the start to write a terrible book that no one would want to read. And then when I'm writing it, there's no pressure because I've set my bar so very low that it doesn't matter what I write that day. It's just like I can write any old rubbish. So I just
I need that. I need that in my life. I'm a Virgo and I'm such a perfectionist that it's like I have to go back and edit as I write. And that is the only thing that has not changed from book to book is like I just cannot let go. Whether it's still like my detriment or not, I don't know. But okay, so it says if you could write another author's sandbox, whose would it be and why?
Oh, you go first.
Well, so sandbox I think means kind of like who would you wish you were as a writer, potentially? Yeah. I'm going to say N.K. Jemisin. I already talked about N.K. Jemisin for the day, but I'm going to say it again. I don't know. I think one thing that I would like to work on is just figuring out how to create like such a breadth of world that you have to so fully immerse yourself in. I think that I am such a plot-based person. Not to say that she isn't, but I basically only put in details about world if it's affected by the plot in that one moment. I want to figure out a way to break free of that because in my mind, I think people get bored easily if it's not connected to the plot in some way, like very specifically. But I don't think that's the case really, because I think if you're, depending on whether the author does it well, I think that showing like the world in a really brilliant way can also draw the reader in. So I just basically want to get to that place.
I think maybe Ian M. Banks' culture books would be an interesting thing to do because it's
Sorry, say that again.
Ian M. Banks' culture science fiction novel.
I'm writing that down.
Sorry?
I said I'm writing that down on my phone.
They're amazing and they're so sort of full of heart and love for humanity, even though it's not actually humans. It's kind of maybe humans, aliens. And this idea of a society where you can literally be anything you want to be. They have the technology that if you're male and you want to be female, you can be that. Or if you actually want to be a bird, you can be a bird. And that is it. And everyone is just, they essentially immortal and they live forever. And he writes books on the edge of this world where they're kind of trying to make other people see that this is quite fun when they're up with. And I think I'd love a go at it, but I don't think I could do it. I don't think I'm good enough. And also, I don't know if you have this. Oh, by the time I get to book 3 of a trilogy, I'm out because I don't like being told what to do.
Yeah.
Even if it's me. And book 1's brilliant because I get to make up all the rules. That's fantastic. Yeah. Book 2, solving a puzzle to some degree of how it all fits together. And then book 3, I'm kind of constrained by that point. And I'm ready to quit. I want to do something different now. I want to be, I don't really, the idea of writing in somebody else's world, it's like being given a set of rules. And I'm not sure it would work that well for me. I think I'd solve quite a lot about it. I don't know if you have, whenever anybody says to me, you can't do this in this thing, immediately my first thought is, yeah, but there must be a way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, because I'm thinking about how this is a duology, but technically I did kind of break free from a lot of rules, because the first book is from Sigourney Rose's perspective, but then the second book is from Lauren Yannick's perspective. So it's a second different character. So I feel like within that, I was able to have a little bit more freedom and create a new set of rules that both books could live within, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's such a brave thing to do as well, to give readers a character that you know they're going to really like, and then sort of do something different and said, it's a different character now, and I'm doing this. And I think that's brilliant. And
well, thank you for saying it's brilliant. I do have to say, Sigourney Rose is like one of the most hateful characters ever. So I don't want anyone. if you like Sigourney Rose, you did not get the point of the book. And now I feel like authors should not be able to say whether a person like understood what the book was about because we put it out into the world. But this was very clear cut. Like, if you like Sigourney Rose as a character, nah.
Fascinating though, to go into the mind of someone maybe you don't particularly like.
Yeah. I mean, I basically was able to tap into everything that I hated about myself. I don't know. Like, we writers are self-loathing sometimes, that that's easy.
There's 300 pages of therapy. Yeah.
This is not the Kacen Callender therapy session. So how important do you believe fantasy is during times like these? I like that question.
Yeah. I think escapism, rather than specifically fantasy, it is always important, and probably more important and more needed the harder the world gets. I know that the harder my life has been, the more I have clung to books. That is a thing that's always been my companion. And I also think fantasy is kind of our oldest literature. Fantasy is the stories we told around the fire to each other before we had technology. It's the myths. We're creating myths where, like science fiction, you're talking about the future and different things. And I think there's something very primal about those myths, and to a degree reinventing and re-rolling them, which fantasy does a lot. So yeah, I think it's important.
Yeah, I agree with that. I for my next fantasy series, I want to lean a little bit more into the escapism. I think that with this first duology, I kind of went the opposite route, which I think is just as valid also, which is using fantasy as a metaphor for the real life, to kind of like be able to use that as a tool for discussion, and to make certain things like racism or like oppression clearer in other ways, because certain people would not be able to see that in their own lives as easily. But when you kind of like put it into the book as a metaphor, suddenly people can understand it in a different way. So I feel like that I really leaned into that. So because of that, I do not know if Queen of the Concord and King of the Rising are what I would call escapism. I think that they can be really difficult books to read. I hope that people are able to read them, but even my own mother was like, I'm sorry, I can't read this. I was like, it's okay, Mom, you don't have to read it. But yeah, I agree. I think the escapism is really important.
My dad struggled with the bone ships for different reasons. In that, my dad's he used to sail properly, big ships around Europe, and I blatantly do not know anything about sailing, which is part of the reason why I wrote a fantasy sailing book, because it's really complicated and hard. So my dad read it and he went, I'm not sure that works, that stuff. And I was going, it's fantasy, magic. Anything doesn't work, it's magic. That's the thing. Oh, this one's for you, Kacen. How has your experience as an editor influenced your writing and your experiences as a published author?
So I was an editor. I quit my job in 2018, so it's been about 2 years. But I was an editor for about 5 years, like assistant editor up to associate editor. And I think that I think it really influenced me the most for my children's books, because I was in children's editing. So that allowed me to see the market in a different way, and to see just how easily editors, as much as they love books, they're doing this for a reason. It can be so easy to say, I'm sorry, I love this, but we just can't sell it because of this, this, and this. So that kind of like made me think about writing a little bit more pragmatically, I think, rather than straight from the heart, which I think was necessary for me to get my first few books published. But now that I've had enough space from that, I am trying to like lean back into the, don't think about this pragmatically. Like, I think it's important for it to an extent, but not to the extent that I was thinking of it as before. Like, I think I want a little bit more freedom from imagining what I would call the acquisitions meeting that's in my head with people like in a round table discussing whether this book will sell or not, you know?
Do you think, I'm always slightly in awe of editors, because I couldn't do it. I know my mind doesn't work like that. Sometimes when people ask me to look at a document, and I've stopped doing it now, I'm just a monster, because I can't. What an editor does, what my editor does that's brilliant, is she makes my stuff more me. It's like she takes my all right books and makes them good. Where if somebody gives me something, all I want to do is make it like me. And are you conscious of that? Do you have to actually separate your head? You have two sort of different processes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like I gave a shout out to Sarah Guan before, and I want to give a shout out to Nivea Evans at this point.
Oh, Nivea's brilliant.
You said, yeah, Nivea is amazing. I think when I was an editor, and I really appreciated what both of them did too, it's kind of like asking what the intent of the author is first. And then for me, my favorite thing was to just ask questions, and to continue to ask questions along the lines of that intent, like knowing what the author is wanting to do, and then saying, does this fit what you're trying to do? Does this kind of like take away from what you're trying to do? Or, yeah, I feel like most of my notes, I would really try to always ask questions rather than say like what I think it should be, because then by asking questions, the author would come up with their own answer. And I think as an author, you also know sometimes, most of the time, people will say, you should try this. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to try that, but I'll try this. And I think that fixes like the issue that's at the heart of what you're trying to tell me is not working, you know?
I'm doing edits on the third Bone Ships book, Wake of the Bone Ships, and I've got it back from Jenny. And it's amazing how many of the comments are essentially, can you just do this properly? Where I know, I know I was writing and thought, I'll just fudge that a bit and I think it'll be all right. And she's just like, no. And then she's picked out like 4 points in the story and just said, these points, they're not right. And I think you can do something better with them. And I've realized that I can, and it's one chess move changes the entire thread of that bit of the book. And I was saying to someone before, it's just like she's taken each end of the book and just twisted it so it's tighter.
Yeah.
And it's such a skill that people never see. And Nivea is sort of involved in that as well, that process. But it's such I'm in awe of them, because I can't do it. I'm just like, put more dragons in it or something.
Yeah. So why was it important for both your stories to focus on ambitious women in positions of power? Ooh,
that's a good one.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first? Or should I go first?
Yeah, so I had this idea for Queen of the Concord, honestly, like 10 plus years ago. And like I was saying before, it's like that kind of thing that just never leaves you alone. And I eventually came back to it. And at that point, I did not really, I'm transgender, I'm non-binary, I use they, them, or he, him pronouns. And at that point, I identified as a woman, a Black woman in the Caribbean. And to me, that was basically it. That's basically the answer to that question. It was wanting to discuss levels of power from the perspective of one of the most ill-treated people in our society. Black women are unheard, are ignored, are I guess we don't need to get into this discussion because I don't want it to be triggering to anyone in the audience as well. But basically, Sigourney was like the most, her identity was important for battling like colonization for that specific reason.
Yeah, as I said before, I wanted to just make people do a bit of a double take about power and how it's wielded and what people do with it. And I'm always frightened that I'm going to word this in a way that comes out like I'm going, oh, all lives matter, which is rubbish, and it's not what I'm saying. I don't, when I'm writing, think of how I'm putting women into positions of authority and ambition. I just write that women are people. I don't make a difference between women and men. I don't think you need to. And just in doing that in itself is a statement that I think is quite important. I mean, people are different, but that's generally what's in my book. And all my life, I've always been surrounded by really competent women, and it kind of annoys me that you don't see that. And there's a lot of sort of middle-aged, competent women and stuff like that. And I just think that's the real world that I live in. So I show it in my books that I know these people just like that. And the other thing is there's a book called The Chronicles of Morgaine by C.J. Cherryh that I read when I was probably 18 or 19, maybe. And it's written from the point of view of Vanya, who's a barbarian. And this woman appears in his world and just sort of destroys it. And he's dragged along with her. And it's quite a difficult book to read. It puts up barriers to get in there, and the way it's written and the language. And it just blew my mind at the right time. And I think in the Assassin books and the Bone Ships, I kind of recreate that male-female platonic master and apprentice thing. And I think it's that book. I'm not going to do it for my next ones, I think, because I've done it twice now. And somebody asked me in quite a leery way, "Oh, do you like strong women?" And I was like, "No, not in the way you're trying to say." But no, it's not. It's very much about not saying women are different, just saying we're all people, and there are all types of characters in my book. There's an asexual character, and that we're just people, and I think it's so important that you can accept people for just being who they are and just love them for it. And that's.
Yeah, I understand that. I agree with it. I also think that even knowing that we're all people and even being surrounded by like competent women that should be in books more often, it's kind of, for me, it's always coming down to, well, yes, we're all people, but society and the government and the system does not see us as all the same. So it's kind of like it all eventually comes down to how are we surviving despite that, and how are we able to tell our stories about how we're managing to survive a system that is literally killing quite a lot of people, Lord, I wanted to kind of like start to talk about the election when you mentioned it earlier, but we don't, let's not.
No. I'm much happier not thinking about that, man. It just makes me better. This is quite a fun one. If your books were optioned for adaptation, would you prefer blockbuster movie or Netflix series? It's vanished.
Yeah. I was thinking about this. I honestly don't know if this is a book. I mean, it has been a dream of mine to have books be adapted. And I'm lucky that one of mine, Felix and Rafter, is going to be adapted into a TV series. But when I was thinking about Queen of the Concord, it's just so internal. And I think that that's how it's meant to be. And I can't see how... I just can't see how it could be adapted into a film or TV series. But if someone came to me with that vision, I'd be like, okay, sure. But I just can't see it myself.
I'm the same with the Bunt, just because I'm aware of how much it would cost to film it. These big ships, and also, do people ask you the question, who would you cast as your characters? I get asked that, and I find it utterly impossible. I just can't do that.
Yeah. Well, I did, when I was writing, I just had Lupita Nyong'o in my head the entire time as Sigourney Rose, so that's the only answer I could give. Yeah. She
is amazing. She is. I really, any of my characters, I think, could walk past me on the street and I wouldn't recognize them, because I'm. It's all about what's in people's heads. For me, that's what interests me. What's going on up here, rather than who they are outwardly.
Now, I have a question for you though. With the live action, I can see how that would be super expensive. But would you consider an animated series? I think that's becoming a bigger thing now.
Yeah. Somebody else said that it would work as animated series. I think if anything like that happened, I would definitely just say, right, take it and do it. I don't want anything to do with it. Because I don't know enough about that world, and it's not, a book is not a TV series. It's different, and you have to let it be that. And I know they're going, but that's not quite how that thing looks in my head. And I think I just have a heart attack eventually.
Yeah.
But it would be lovely to have it happen.
So books allow readers to experience other perspectives, empathize, and ask them questions about our society reflected back. As writers, what have you learned about yourselves and the world in writing these stories?
Oh, that's quite a deep question. Thank you. That made me think, which is not a thing I do a lot. You go first, Kacen, so I can try and think of it.
I love this question. I feel like I spoke about it before, so I don't want to be too repetitive, but I think that King of the Concord and King of the Rising were reflections on our society, specifically for that gray area of what it means to be an oppressed person with identities such as like Blackness, queerness. What does it mean to be oppressed in the society? But then we're also, in the American experience anyway, a lot of us have been taught that if you just work hard enough and if you just play the game of capitalism, you will break free. And a lot of us in our generation are learning that that is a lie. Capitalism is a lie. Capitalism is horrible. And we should not be wanting to be the kind of person that makes it and then continues to allow other people to suffer because they are being killed by the same system. So what does it mean to be stuck in that space is what I wanted to look at in both of the books. And then without spoiling it, I basically wanted to give the message of this is what will happen by the end of the duology if we don't break free of the system.
Yeah, I think I permanently examine power and corruption because, like Kacen, I see that in the world and how unfair it is for the majority of people, and how much luck plays into success, and how often lucky people actually have a lot of money behind them is well, it's not really a surprise once you get to a certain age. But the thing I did discover with my books is that I was re-examining the whole process of becoming very ill, and I was really ill and in a lot of pain. And the Assassin books are all about that, and sort of traveling through that experience of pain and mortality, and looking at it and the way people treat you differently when you're not seen as able-bodied in the same way as they are. And then the Bone Ships was quite consciously for me, the first book. It is about the realization of how weak your body is and how easily damaged and destroyed and taken apart it is, and how that can be absolutely not your fault at all, just happenstance. And Joran's big fear running through the book is he's seen his father die quite early at the beginning in a quite unpleasant but unlucky way, and that fear powers him throughout the entire book. And I never think that I think about my own life that much, but then there's like 6 books, so clearly I do.
Yeah, I think it's funny. When I first started writing, I just did not actually make that connection that every single book was really about me until I started to read it back. And I was like, oh, this is literally about my childhood trauma. That's cool. What stories of any medium are you both enjoying at the moment, or have you enjoyed recently?
Oh, I just watched Queen's Gambit, which I thought was just wonderful. Just really kind of feel good television, but it's nice to see people on television just being good at something, which I really enjoyed. And I've read Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I really love Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. I'm in two minds about Piranesi, in that I really enjoyed it, and I also felt it was weirdly empty. And I don't know if that's part of the point of the book. I think it might be an extended metaphor, and I thought about it a lot, so I would say probably succeeds as a book, but I'm not sure I actually liked it. And then I've been watching The Mandalorian and Star Trek Discovery, and I think Star Trek Discovery is brilliant, and The Mandalorian is it's all right.
Yeah,
that's going to be so much hate. Sorry.
I tried to watch Mandalorian, but my friend was telling me that you really have to really be into Star Wars to understand like a lot of what's happening. And I felt like I was trucking along. I was like, oh, I'm not really sure I'm getting it, so I'm going to stop at this point. Yeah, I've been a lot of TV for sure. But the first thing that popped into my head was Patrick Ness's A Monster Calls, and I do not know why it took me so long to read that book, but that was it's a middle grade, or is it a YA? I'm not sure. But it was just masterful, and it's everything that I try to do with my own children's books. So I know we're talking about adult books here, but
they're all adult books. I don't make that sort of. I'll read anything except I won't read A Monster Calls because I know what it's about and it's too sad for me. I can't understand.
All right, what was that? What did you say?
A Monster Calls. I just know I will weep at the end of it. And
oh my god, it was. Yeah, it really struck me as something that's the kind of book that I really want to be writing myself. And I just the middle grade that I've been writing recently is basically what is attempting to do what that book succeeded in. So
do you feel and I was talking about this with I think who was speaking to? Can't remember yesterday. I'm not good at remembering things. Do you feel like I always feel like there's a better writer that I am and they're just out of reach when I'm writing? They're just up there. They just can't quite get there.
Of course.
It's infuriating. It's
always going to be I'm kind of accepted that that's just going to be the way it is. And even, I'm going to put myself on blast here. I definitely had like a bit of a narcissistic section of my writing career where I was like, this is the best book I've ever written, y'all. This is going to be the best book of the year. And then it came out and everyone else loved another book more. And I was like, oh. Here is my diet slice of humble pie. I will accept it. And I feel like that has been for the best for me because it has been like a huge reminder that it doesn't, we were talking about this before the live started, like the reviews, the awards, they're all great, but they can also be a distraction for me from what is the purpose of my writing. And I think it even started to affect one of my most recent books I was writing, where I started to think, is this a book that would win awards? I shouldn't be thinking that. I should be thinking, is this going to be a book that impacts lives and changes lives and like gets the message that I want out there? So I'm personally starting to be like, listen, I know that there are thousands, hundreds of thousands, an infinite number of better writers than me, but I just need to focus on what I'm trying to do, you know?
It's really weird because we all have to walk a tightrope between thinking, yeah, I'm really good and people will pay to read this story that I have. And on the other side of it is I am terrible and I need someone to help me and tell me what to do. And it's kind of a weird kind of, but you need both of those and you have to be them both at the same time. And it's a really odd experience. I've met very few writers who aren't sort of wavering between this massive confidence and then sudden like, oh, maybe I've got it wrong.
Yeah. And I feel like that's how it is for almost every single writer I've ever spoken to. So.
Oh, this is how much input do you get into the covers of your books nationally and internationally?
I did not get. I did get input, but it actually came basically the way that it is now. And I was like, that's beautiful. Here's like one note, you know. So I didn't really have to give much input.
Yeah, I get nothing. Absolutely. I just did that, and then I realized that you can't do that anymore because it's been stolen, hasn't it?
Yeah, I did not think of that myself.
Yeah, I was not making gang signs. Zero input like Kacen. Sometimes Orbit send me covers, and I go, I'm not really sure about that. And they'll go, well, we could change the color. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I learned with my first book that the cover is not for you. It's not for the author. It's a coded thing for the reader to tell them what they're going to get.
Yeah.
And you might, I always have an idea of what I think the book's about, but I'm generally wrong. And the marketing people do actually seem to know what they're doing. So
yeah. Oh, they know what they're doing for sure. I also feel like they know what they're doing in terms of like making sure it's the cover that the audience would want. Like I might have a different idea of who the audience is in my head, but they're thinking, well, there are these other audiences that you haven't even considered that would probably like this cover a little bit more. But like I said, for this one, it was perfect anyway.
Yeah, I love the Bone Ships cover with that big dragon on it. Absolutely slayed me when I saw it. So yeah, that's it for this book. We've got we've got a compliment. I'm always going to read out a compliment. Both of y'all's hair game is on point. What are your pandemic secrets? From RWW Green.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I've been using a product called Carol's Daughter, which is definitely, I basically just like soak it with leave-in conditioner.
Yeah, see, I'm a big fan of mousse. So, and I'm quite lucky that I have hair that doesn't take a lot of looking after. I can just sort of leave it, and it does sort of this 70s heavy metal thing that I'm quite okay with. Yeah, but that's I once had a weave which just drove me mad. I don't know how people wear them without.
Yeah, I haven't done that before either. Yeah, now I'm gonna start to stare at my hair a little bit too much, but
no, it's fantastic. That's brilliant.
Someone is asking, I've seen a few YA books featuring trans and non-binary characters released this year, but I'm struggling to find the same in adult books. I was so ready to give you all the YA recommendations. And now I'm like, in adult books, I have to think. The first person that came to my mind, and of course I'm going to butcher their name, but you probably already know about them anyway, the author of Freshwater, Akwaeke Emezi, I think it is. That's the only person that comes to mind for adults. Like I said, I'm so entrenched in like the YA middle grade space that I'm not really as sure about the adult space. But what about Neon Yang? Neon Yang is another trans author that I really like a lot. I know that they're out there, but I'm kind of like having to shift my brain. Nothing's coming to mind immediately. But
there's a crime novel set in Victorian England that has the main character is trans, and I read it and it's really good, and I can't remember the name of the book. It's just gone completely out of my head. But I'll try and dig it. It's somewhere on my bookshelves out there, but there's a lot of bookshelves. I'll try and find it and I'll put it on my Twitter later on, because that was really good. And there's a non-binary character in the Bone Ships, so they're kind of a secondary character, not in a disrespectful way, in that they're kind of, you have your main characters and the ones behind it, and they come forward more in Call of the Bone Ships. But I'm kind of wary in that it's not my experience. I don't want to push it too far, but I also think it's important that people are there, that you just the fact of somebody being there makes it more. And when I was young, I always wanted to see because I was a really feminine boy who people always thought was a girl, and I never saw myself until I discovered hair metal. and I think it's important to see those.
I am kind of like looking back at my shelves to see if there's something obvious I've forgotten, but I know that they're out there. It's just more it's just more a question of like, I wish I could remember right now. But
it's the sort of question that the minute this ends, we'll both go, oh,
right. Exactly.
We're down to about 6 minutes. So how do you get started writing a new story and plot? From Jordan.
Question that's like a 20-minute answer.
Yeah. I don't know. I just sit down and I think about a thing a lot, and stuff happens. And I'm terrified that at some point something won't happen, because I don't understand the technicalities of it. I don't know. I couldn't describe to you why a story arc works. I just know when it does. So I'll let Kacen start, because I don't want to think about it. It's too frightening. It's like a cliff.
Well, Well, earlier I did mention the compost heap, and it does change from like process to process, but basically I have like 100 ideas, and they're the ideas that I can't let go of, that I think about like almost every day, and those are the ones I know I have to work on next.
Yeah.
And then from there, I just try to figure out what the point of the book is for me. So like what message I'm trying to get across, and I build the plot around that. And I would love to say Story Genius by Lisa Cron has been a huge help in like craft for figuring out for me how to make sure the plot is built around like traumas and wounds and how that reflects back to the theme. So yeah, that's basically how I would like every process to go. It has been very complicated depending on the book.
As you're both nearly finished, what are your current series? What are you working on next? We've got about 2 minutes each.
I am working on a bunch of children's books that have not even been announced yet. So that's my answer, super quick.
I'm working on something that's vaguely Robin Hood based and is kind of a bit nicer than my other books. That's as much as I can say, because again, it's not set in stone or anything. But it has squid in it, land squid. That's my big obsession because I like squid.
Is there a giant monster squid in it?
There might be. I've not really got that far with it yet. It's a possibility. I think there will be some sort of giant monster in it. I do like a giant monster. You can never have that.
Squid, and then you can say that you got the idea from Kacen Callender.
Yeah. And then you'll find yourself dying in the second book.
At least I'll get an acknowledgement at some point.
Yeah.
Well, it's only a few more minutes if there's nothing else. Thanks for spending this time with me. It was really great to chat with you, RJ.
It's been lovely talking to you, Kate. Really lovely.
Yeah.
I love it. I can so miss meeting other writers. That's the worst thing about going back to the COVID thing earlier on. The worst thing is not getting to just talk to.
I agree. And realizing that this job is not, it can just be so like isolating. So being able to like talk to another person about it has been great.
I think Orbit are saying thank you, RJ and Kacen. I think that's a hint.
Yeah, they're like, goodbye, get out of here.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to vanish now. It's been lovely, everybody. Thank you for coming to our house.